On September 21st, 2023, Payday 3 launched to the public and tens of thousands of players retreated to this screen. The thousands of people begging for this game not to be online only had been vindicated. These servers went down to Starry's chagrin for 3 excruciating days, and it took even longer for them to stabilize, at which point not even a tenth of the players were left. I'm not going to refute the fact that this was Payday 3 at its lowest, but a lot of people get it wrong when they say this major on-launch gaffe is why it's currently fighting for its life, delaying scheduled content updates just to instantiate some much-needed fixes, while player numbers, until recently, would somehow shrink even smaller with each patch. But the current state of Payday 3 is, surprisingly, the best it's been all year. That's not saying much for a game that lost 70% of its players 2 months in a row. You could argue it could only go up eventually, but the point still stands that on May's update day, the game had the most players it's had all year. Or, well, close enough. The player base that's been hanging around since the game fell off back then is clearly turning up again for all the new changes it's gotten. And with a major content update slated for this month to juice the player base even more, this seems like the worst time to make a claim like mine. Payday 3 is the worst it has ever been since launch. I am not being dramatic. I sincerely believe that Payday 3 has shot its own game design in the foot every step of the way and wholly ruined the charm it had from launch. Let me clear the air though. This is not another video dunking on Payday 3. This is a thorough dismantling of its development since launch, why I think the game has gotten worse, and what it can do to be better. And this is best explained from the very beginning, because before I explain to you how it's gotten worse, I first need to show you the beauty of what they had on launch.
This game feels better than Payday 2 in almost every conceivable way other than my previously listed issues. It's so much fun to play, and I've barely scraped the surface.
The game is still lacking slightly in polish. It makes up for in spades in terms of mechanical depth and just outright fun.
This feels like nothing that you played before. I don't know any game that plays anything like this. They know exactly what they're doing. They know what works. They know what didn't work. They know what they want to go forward with. I mean, really, all Starbreeze have to do is stick the landing. Don't fumble the bag. This will be one of the best co-op games of all time.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. We all know this game was garbage on launch. When I refer to on launch, I actually mean the version of it that was playable. And it wasn't playable for days after launch, but if you forked some money over, you got early access before the servers broke. Guess who did? Silver and Gold editions got to play Payday 3 3 days early, and I've never been more blessed to be peer pressured out of $30 because for all 3 days of early access, these servers remained online and then broke down right after. So with all its bugs and ugliness, on launch was still a playable product to me, and that's generally what I'm discussing every step of the way through this video. Not the semantics of bugs or out of game menu nonsense, because bugs or not, one thing remained true about Payday 3. Its gameplay was refreshing and pristine. Immerse yourself. You're sliding around and shooting like it's Call of Duty, imitating the best shooter in the industry, with new and rebuffed specials and a newfound appreciation for map design. Everything from Payday 2 has been flipped on its head. Taking armor damage leaves some trauma damage before you regen, so all damage is now bad damage. Difficulties no longer scale cop health, so normal and overkill are much closer together because cops take the same amount of bullets in either one, as opposed to Payday 2 where a cop on normal dies in 1 bullet and a cop on death sentence survives 2 drum magazines. And no more overpowered skills. I cannot emphasize how important all of these factors are to Payday 3's DNA enough. But I'll try. I can imagine someone's gripe with Payday 3 skills as pure preference. For starters, Edge is kind of boring. 10% more damage isn't very sexy. In Payday 2, You take this skill and basically double your damage the entire heist. That is sexy. In Payday 3, you take these two skills and you have to do a Street Fire combo to unlock 30 seconds of 10% damage up. But hey, that's why the cop health doesn't scale anymore. They clearly thought about the damage numbers and made edge actually useful. For most guns, whether or not you have edge is whether or not you waste another bullet killing a cop, especially in the cases of revolvers or marksmans, where a one-shot headshot with edge was a kill when it wouldn't be without it. This is a huge deal because that spare bullet will be the difference between getting shot before you kill your target, or having to change guns in front of your target, or running out of ammo entirely. And remember, all damage is bad damage, and the longer you spend facing someone down, the longer you risk damage that never leaves you. Moreover, none of the skills are very flashy alone compared to Payday 2, but the synergy of them all can't be understated. Namely, insanely powerful skills like Last Man Standing ignored death as long as you had grit and aid kits. The only problem is that getting grit was its own Tekken combo, and the majority of skills either generate or require any of rush, grit, or edge to work. Players actually had to build smartly, investing in skills that generate these, and negotiating some because inevitably they couldn't have all three all the time. Making players work to maximize their skills instead of spoon-feeding them 1.9 times damage is engaging. It's genuine game difficulty as opposed to doubling every cop's health or any other way you could manufacture it. And to wrap back around on taking damage, my hot take is that armor was perfect on launch. All the bozos running foreplate and shoving their face with armor refills while tanking the damage were downright embarrassing. Trauma damage was good, losing armor was good, and forgive my exclusionary terminology, but no one was willing to get good. The fact that you would inevitably take enough damage to lose your armor, no matter what, signified a fundamental game design law Payday 3 revolved around. You can't live forever. No more hours-long cook-offs, huffing your own farts while 99% dodge, and your infinitely regenerating armor is as good as infinite health. In Payday 3, the statement was that simple. You've been robbing a bank for 10 minutes, the cops are bringing out the heavy SWAT and the dozers, you need to get out now. With the armor system ensuring you eventually run out of armor, they managed to design a fair system where you will have no choice but to leave armorless or die trying. There is a genuine sense of pressure between the dwindling resources and stronger enemies spawning, and your ability to rush each heist is squarely in your hands. This made for one of the most thrilling co-op experiences of all time. And I could go on to every detail, from the diverse yet careful map design to every single enemy and their interactions, or the ugly side like the flawed progression system or the lack of build variety, but the truth is, you know exactly what you need to know. This game worked. The mechanics I've mentioned have significant interplay with each other and lead to a fantastic, one-of-a-kind experience, albeit still very flawed. All the developers have to do now is coast on these established mechanics, delicately build on them with the occasional content update, and Payday 3 will be the perfect game. If I managed to sell you on just how good pre-launch Payday 3 was, I should warn you that this video will only exist because we are far and beyond that point now. I believe every update has in some way jeopardized the game feel more than it has helped it, and some way more than others. There aren't that many updates, so I'll summarize each patch, comb over every important change, and you'll notice how my gripes begin to snowball. Particularly the first few updates, all during 2023, are generally positive for the game health. I've also devised a graphic for this timeline, I'm sorry it looks overly professional. I stole this laptop from an office and this neat little graphic making software was on it, so I made do. So starting off, September 21st to 23rd, as we've established repeatedly, the game is basically unplayable during this time window to all platforms for 3 full days and spotty for the full week after. By the time they're stable enough to reliably connect, the player count is a third of its launch peak at around 20,000. Not to mention, the game is incredibly buggy and soft crashes often. I just wanted to bring attention to this and the next point to showcase how this game went from an 80,000 player peak to an averaging 2,000 by the time it was first patched. So again, from September 21st to November 2nd, there were no updates at all. This game launched with several bugs and miraculously didn't get a single update for a month and change. You got the spark notes in those news article headlines, the short version of why is every time they tried to certify the patch for consoles, they found another game-breaking bug. This is where people think Payday 3 went wrong, and they are absolutely right. Between the 21st and 22nd, they went from an 80,000 player peak to 3,000. But most games that launch terribly reel things back over the course of the next year and stabilize their player count. If you look at the past 6 months, they've not even broken 2,000 concurrent players. There is a fundamental issue with Payday 3 beyond a wonky launch that has stopped players from returning, and while you might think the most recent player peak signifies nature healing, I am here to argue it's not. Specifically, I'm going to have a few nitpicks for the patches leading up to 2024, but the main problems will rear their head after that. And to be clear, every time I reference specific player numbers, I'm only accounting for Steam players, but the definition of statistics says that Steam charts are a representative sample of all platforms playing Payday 3. If Steam players are declining or they suddenly spike, the same is also happening on Xbox and PlayStation and so on. We just don't have access to those specific numbers. So finally, on November 2nd, the game got no content but a load of bug fixes, including, allegedly, a bug that excluded certain favors from the favor pool. Favors are a contentious spot for me because a few of them make the game significantly easier, all of which released in this bug fix. One thing is having 2 extra armor plates on the map, which you can put into every heist, but another thing is skipping an objective or a full minute of objective time just for bringing a favor. I won't belabor the point by showing off every instance of this, but most heists simplify things to the game's detriment, instead of Payday 2, at its best, letting you choose what parts of the heist to simplify. Payday 3 only has enough favor slots available to pick everything that simplifies the heist and ignore anything else. You're not even negotiating what you feel is worth skipping, and some heists like Dirty Ice are so short of breath, you shouldn't be able to simplify them anymore.
We're going to be ranking all 32 of those. Starting out in last place, the reason why this is the worst one in this list is because it doesn't really work. This favor is insane in the sense that it can save you and your team several minutes, the worst favor I had ever come across. This can spare your team of several seconds to even longer than a minute, which is a pretty terrible favor if you ask me. It can actually have outright negative effects on your run. Pretty much makes hauling bags to the chopper a completely safe experience.
On November 30th, we got the Legacy Heist update. This added Cook-Off and Murky Station from Payday 2, remade and ported, as well as a new skill line called Transporter, and more bug fixes and some balance changes I won't cover. The Transporter skill line rubs me the wrong way. For a heist like No Rest for the Wicked, you intentionally have 8 bags in your lap, and you need to bring home 7. This skill line lets you carry 2 bags instead of 1. You do the math. A heist whose primary challenge was running out in the open for a long period of time and then running back to the bank for a second helping of 4 bags with your entire team is now just 1 trip with this skill line, and I considered No Rest the gold standard for map layout before this skill, But unfortunately, this just trivializes it and makes me wonder how this affects future game design space, because this doesn't just affect this existing heist, but now every heist in the future can't use this technique of forcing players to make multiple bag trips. Having more or less than 8 is now punishing players for having transporter or not. Moreover, this skill nearly doubled the amount of armor or health you could bring to a heist, which isn't inherently bad, but it's not like they were making difficulty changes to account for this. In the grand scheme of things, this is just a nitpick. It gets much worse. And as for the heists themselves, they are fantastic and a very smart introduction to the game. This game needed more heists, and it still does. On December 12th, we got Syntax Error, a new heist, 3 new weapons, the techie, 1 more special and overkill as a balance tweak, and armor repair kits. The glaring issue with Syntax Error isn't completely out of this video scope, so I'll mention it once. People were very upset with Syntax Error costing $18 altogether. The devs have already corrected this by cutting the price by 1/3 for the upcoming 3 DLC this year, albeit begrudgingly. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The new heist is great, the weapons are weapons, no problem there with the DLC itself. I actually applaud the extra special and overkill difficulty because these specials are essentially the star of the show. You love to hate them. Having to deal with a cloaker or a taser or a grenadier kills the monotony of the nth cop trying to push you. And as for the techie, it was only released on Syntax Error, weirdly enough, so there's just not as much to be said yet. The devs promise it'll come to all heists at a later date. That can't be too far away. Also, this is editor me. I forgot to also mention they added the free scrambler skill line. It's useless, it doesn't do anything. That's why I forgot to add it to the script. But you should know it was also added, so there you go. So, I'm back on my nitpicking then. But the problem with this update is the harebrained addition of armor repair kits. If your armor has trauma damage, you can use these to refill it. If you don't have any armor, you cannot use these. The subtext there is that they are useless, because in a perfect situation, they regenerate half your armor, and in most situations, it's too late. This wouldn't be a big deal, but the way you get them cannibalizes an existing mechanic, hostage trading. Before, hostage trading gave you an aid kit, or sometimes 2 or 3. This was the best way a medic bag build had an in this game. The previous patch nerfed its core skill last man standing, which you remember ignored death. Once you ignored death, you refresh the skill, so you could do it again by eating a medic bag or aid kit. Now half the time you trade hostages, you get armor kits instead of aid kits. Given how poor build variety is in this game, this is an awful change. But again, it gets worse. Despite these nitpicks, I generally consider Syntax Error as the peak. The game feel was healthy and fun, there's additional content from launch, and the most glaring bugs have been fixed. Syntax Error is the inflection point, and now begins a downward spiral. But it's ironic. If you were living there in the moment, it felt nothing like a peak. Progression still sucked, matchmaking was still miserable, console players still couldn't talk to each other, and you still couldn't play offline. The game was riddled with problems besides bugs that weren't being addressed. How could the game get worse while making all these problems better?
They're hotfixing it? Nice! How did it even make it in live? How? Sweet, guys! They're hotfixing it! Cool! That's awesome and all! How did it even make it to live servers? How? How did they think that was okay to even put it in the game? I'm so sick of this fucking company. They're trash! Fix the game! It sucks playing the shit! And I'm fucking addicted! So I can't quit!
Finally, with the turn of the new year, The team admitted the game was quite ass for a few reasons I just mentioned that aren't necessarily in the scope of this video. No offline mode, poor matchmaking, and poor UI. There are other things mentioned like progression and rotating modifiers that I will address later. What matters is that they were fixing it all. Operation Medic Bag was announced February 15th and laid out countless changes that the team hoped to make in 2024, ideally by
Summer 2024.
Oh hey, this month. And the first of these fixes came on Leap Day. February 29th, they delivered to us the first Operation Medic Bag patch, which was just quality of life really and rotating modifiers, which I'll get into later. Afterwards, on March 27th, we got the second Operation Medic Bag patch, which brought in adaptive armor, the fortitude skill line, the adrenaline mechanic, and skill points. Here's where everything gets dicey. All that beautiful stuff I said about armor trauma damage, enter adaptive armor. You take no trauma damage with this, you either regen the full plate or break it fully. This is the stupidest thing to come to the game to date. Not only was trauma damage a superior system for how it played into the all damage is bad damage concept, but there are armor kits in the game that I just talked about at length that only work if you have trauma damage. Except, an old skill was reworked with this patch. If you have no armor, you can use armor repair kits. So sure, you can totally disregard trauma damage as a mechanic with this, except most people don't. Adaptive armor has a 5% damage resistance, which, for reference, your armorless health bar has 0% damage resistance, and other armors have
25%.
So, if you're gonna be losing armor plates at all, it's leagues beyond inferior, and nobody plans on losing armor. It's the worst of both worlds. Theoretically infinite health in a game where players should be losing resources over time, and simultaneously the worst gameplay experience, because nobody wants to peek out, lose 90% of their armor in 2 shots, and then sit behind cover to recoup it. That's why I'm playing Payday 3 instead of 2. That's why goofballs were running around with 4 plates on launch instead of learning to regen it, and still do. What drove them to put something totally anti-game design in the game? The community? Does it matter? Moving on, fortitude and adrenaline are intertwined. The adrenaline mechanic is a new mechanic where you can overheal past your max health, doubling your health at max adrenaline. Adrenaline decreases over time, so far it's in line with the theme of losing resources and actually engaging with the mechanic so you don't waste it. One thing off the bat, you lose adrenaline before armor, which just doesn't make any sense. You get to keep your armor while your adrenaline runs out, so there's no risk to it as a third health bar. It already sounds like it makes the game comically easy, and I'll remind you, there are no difficulty tweaks to this patch, so yes, it was really easy. Especially with fortitude, which lets your adrenaline last longer, do more, resist more damage, give you more health, and lets you bring more medic bags. I have no inherent issue with adrenaline, but this implementation throws the balance out of the window. This is the only skill tree collaborating with adrenaline. You'd be stupid not to bring fortitude because it synergizes with all 3 of the buffs and gives you a third health bar. This is still an issue 3 months later. Lastly, 7 more skill points. What? Look at this explanation. It essentially says, here's 25% more skill points as a little treat. Everyone went from 21 to 28 skill points, which, need I remind you, straight up equals 7 more of these insane skills I've discussed so far. Enough for everyone to add the entire fortitude line to their existing build, and why wouldn't they? Balance is irrevocably ruined. You don't just give players 7 more skill points and then, when it breaks the game, say, oh, whoopsie, everyone is too strong now, maybe we can call takesies backsies on this and only give you 3 or 4. Like, Why didn't they just drip feed a couple skill points per update? So, because the game got significantly easier and there weren't any difficulty tweaks, the game was a steamroll for everyone playing, and people were kind of happy. They actually liked steamrolling, and people generally were playing this game more. So what do I know? Well, rest assured knowing this didn't last either. On April 30th, we got the third Operation Medic Bag patch. Should figure out a way to just shorthand call these, but it brought quick play, requeue, shot grenades, etc. Nothing of note this patch. All great changes for sure, quick play and so on are nice quality of life, but it's not impactful to the gameplay in question. The introduction of the shot grenade was negligible, it's still the worst grenade in the game. So we'll be skipping over that basically and going to May 29th. And in this patch, they overhauled progression, added rotating modifiers, the assassin's skill line, and they brought the techie to all levels. We are up to speed, the latest update. Your ears should be perking up because this update inspired this video. So let's start small. Techie took nearly 6 months to come to all heists, and in that time it underwent a lot of change. Initially, its drone turrets dealt obscene damage, but now are just little mosquitoes that only serve to stop you from regenerating armor with minimal damage, which is honestly fine. If the game was working as intended and armor mattered at all, I think this would be an amazing feature. Likewise, Techie was soft launched with another drone type that removes and blocks your buffs if the drone shoots you. I don't have any strong thoughts on this because it just doesn't work well. The drone is spectacularly sluggish and rarely hits anyone in a heist. On paper, I don't really want my entire build to fold for 15 seconds because a drone just negated all my synergy. And in practice, I don't really care if I lost my buffs for a very short window because it'd take a very specific situation for someone to need their synergies in that second. People have always been able to survive without buffs, but they could make it work. I just think the game balance has gone so far and beyond what the techie aims to target. I also don't like how the techie hides. By design, techies are hidden somewhere on the map as they work their drones, but learning their hiding spots should not be the gimmick. The techie always hides under these stairs
Under the surface.
and these stairs on and so on, but the challenge should be reaching the techie, not finding her. The assassin skill line is interesting. As a concept, I like it and it's something to build around. It hints at a new kind of build with this line. If you have no armor, this is the first time skills punish you or don't activate at all for having armor, and at this point, I welcome it. This encourages build variety and complements the existence of adrenaline, which would be a good thing if it were balanced, so maybe one day. However, you can't not bring armor. I'm just nitpicking a strange and obvious oversight. The actual glaring issue with this skill line is this skill. Heal for 10 whenever you kill an enemy, and you have 100 max HP by default, but if you take Fortitude, you get 50 more. So we are officially over the crest of the dwindling resources mechanic. If adaptive armor was too flimsy to serve as infinite health, this will overheal you for 10 HP per kill forever. A much easier and more reliable skill check to get 2 to 3 kills for every hit you take, just to break even on health. You can now sustain yourself infinitely. Progression was in a weird place on launch. I think if challenges had better framing off the bat, they'd be more palatable, but realistically, you can bring the gamer to the gun shop, but you can't make them interface with other weapons. If people only wanted to play with one gun on one heist, or their beautiful brain compelled them to min-max challenge completions against their will, then forcing them to play with all these heists and mechanics to level up just wasn't necessary. However, what they replaced challenges with is appalling. Let me frame it this way. My good friend Lucky, whom streams this game often, played 0 to 100 on old progression and timed it. You stop unlocking weapons and skill points at 100, so this is why he stopped there. Playing semi-casually, it was casual until he wasn't getting any more challenges without seeking them out. He took 31.5 hours. With this new progression, he took 6.5 hours playing casually. That's backed by another streamer, Alicia, that reached 100 in about 6 hours on her trip to level 150 in one stream. That only took about 12.5 hours. The point being, holy shit, they fucked up progression so bad. Is 31.5 hours a fair amount of time to spend to unlock everything? You probably expected me to say no, but the idea behind it's that you only had to do it once. In Payday 2, you shotgun a 0 to 100 in a couple hours easily, then you reset your level and go next. Which is kind of weird because Payday 2 has so many heists, and Payday 3 still has so few. It should be the opposite. You know, it's only natural. People got bored of redoing these heists for a crumb of experience from challenges. But it's not the opposite. You can't reset your level in Payday 3, so I think it's fine if it's a time sink to get over the level 100 crest once. And then, from then on, you still have to reach level 150, you can casually chip away at those challenges while having fun. Instead of Infamy, all the way back in the second update with Legacy Heist, they introduced Renown. Essentially, every time you level up while you're at level 150, you instead get to see this number go up. Thank you. This is much more fulfilling than Payday 2's Infamy. Lest ye forget, cop health is still balanced as it was on launch. It wouldn't be that weird to run overkill with a few or no skills, and that's why I'm actually interested in seeing levels reset. And that's just not what's going on here. Maybe the dev team can pivot back to the level 0 prestige-like system, but with people already sitting on 1500 renown, I have no idea how they're going to undo this mess. The other progression problem here is essentially that it used to be too slow but fine, and now it's so comically fast the beginner sense of progression is out the window in all senses. Most people won't complain about it because they're already at 100, but watch Lucky or Alicia on their 0 to 100s and notice neither of them fully leveled up their guns, which is how you unlock attachments, in the time it took them to hit 100. Lucky only used the Car 4 for the full 6.5 hours and didn't max it out. Guns level up at different rates than players, so you will have every gun unlocked before you can enjoy one. And that's just a literal example, but spiritually this applies to skills, armors, grenades, everything level locked. Another problem is how much progression you get per heist. Firstly, you gain XP for securing all bags. This has been true since legacy heists were introduced, which is ironic because Cook-Off, a legacy heist, takes a full hour to get all bags. Now the XP is magnitudes better, so if you aren't getting all bags, you're not optimizing your XP, which means people are automatically turned off of heists like Cook-Off that pay you half the XP for a 10-minute clear. Or you could go for all bags and get 10 minutes worth of XP in 60. In general, encouraging all bags is a great thing now that the game is super easy because you can goad players into a more difficult heist clear. But it doesn't work on Cook-Off, and you need to stealth part of Rock the Cradle for all bags, and future heists will suffer from constricted game design if they have to worry about how possible all bags actually is. Moreover, as a niche issue, you gain XP if you're in loud or in stealth, which is weird because there's a 1-minute window between breaking stealth and going loud, where a lot of heists end. Plenty of heists involve rushing that last minute before hell breaks, and that was a lot of the charm on launch, that you could stealth most of a heist. But now you're gonna get punished for leaving instead of waiting for assault to start, and some heists, like No Rest, will extend the heist time and objectives once you go loud. Overall, both aspects of progression shoot heist design in the foot. And lastly, progression just isn't satisfying. I don't care about the number going up. I don't care about randomly, arbitrarily getting these rewards for renown levels. There is no drive going forward because I have everything unlocked and no goals. They really threw the baby out with the bathwater instead of keeping challenges, and now all players have to keep them going forward is this little number going up. Infamy was better somehow, and as long as 0 to 100 is this easy, Payday 3 would benefit from a prestige system way more than Payday 2 ever did at driving the post-game with so few heists to play but so much fun to be had. Prestiging could kill the monotony and refresh replayability in a huge way. And the team is evidently invested in replayability because this update also introduced many rotating modifiers. Firstly, modifiers are difficulty gimmicks for high levels. On very hard you get 1 and on overkill you get 2. On launch and up until now, there's only 3, lead guard, titan cameras, and Cerberus core. All of these are impacting stealth. In the syntax error update, they made these modifiers begin rotating every other week, which means one day you may show up to the bank and every camera is destructible, the next day they're not. Not a huge deal, and it didn't matter at all when there were only 3 options, but you see where I'm going with this. This patch introduced 6 loud modifiers and 2 stealth ones. So on the topic of stealth, this particular modifier flips stealth on its head. I don't have much allegiance to stealth, I take it or leave it, so I'll let everyone else speak on threat detection.
Payday 3 stealth does a lot of really good stuff, and I don't want that to start being undone by modifiers like this. I love the public, private, secure area layout of Payday 3 stealth. I think it makes it far more intuitive. So to have modifiers that basically eliminate the difference between 2 of those zones, I think is personally really, really bad.
This sounds annoying, but it's trivialized by the grifter skill line, and it's easy access to rush, which is where I really have a problem with it. I don't think you should be locked into a specific skill line and style of play to deal with an individual modifier. It should instead be circumventable by raw stealthing skill, which simply isn't the case for threat detection.
Then there's the loud modifiers. Plenty has been said about these because the general consensus is that they're no good, so before I run through my thoughts, I'll offer some important preamble. You don't know the modifier you're playing with. You could know, but if you quick play into a heist, you have no idea until it started. And if you skip the intro by default, you instead have to pull out your reading glasses and suss out what the modifier is from this menu. So, for all of these, don't imagine yourself changing your build to fit this singular heist modifier that changes between weeks. I'll shotgun my thoughts on all these now. Players can't leave custody without a hostage trade. Absolute ass. Once again, the dev team is totally disregarding a fundamental game mechanic, 2 minutes of custody, just to fuck around and find out how the community would adapt. And the reality is, they don't, because nobody reads these and you cannot make hostages out of thin air without a niche skill. So if all the hostages are off the map, anyone going to custody is better off playing a new game. 2 specials at a time, this is fine and fun. Anything to bring more attention to specials is always good, and there's no outrageousness to the difficulty spike of an extra grenadier or dozer or whatever. Specials disable buffs, who cares? Getting hit by a special isn't very common, and like I've already said, the game balance isn't in a position where if you briefly can't rely on your buffs, you suffer any consequences. 5% of armor damage is now health damage. Again, who cares? Why run armor in the first place right now? But even if you do, 5% is so negligible, it's funny. If this was something on launch, it would be interesting to have something forcing you to want aid kits in essentially the armor meta in a world where armor was your only option. But it's far too late now. Regular SWAT are now heavy SWAT, absolute ass. Sure, it doesn't stop you from playing the game, but the rampant progression of a heist and that 10-minute mark where you need to get out before the heavy SWAT start beating your ass, well, it's just here at the first minute now. The game wasn't balanced around heavy SWAT, they're more like the boogeymen you have to cope with for staying in a heist too long, and the lead game dev admits and echoes exactly this sentiment, but fails to mention the consequence of starting with them. Having them at the start exhaust your ammo and health very quickly. It's super awkward and unfun to dump 15 bullets to one of their heads and get 3 back. This feels like Payday 2. Shields have flashlights, I'm happy for them or whatever, this doesn't do anything either. Just a little lens flare. I don't know why they didn't just make it a flashbang instead, that would have been impactful at least. So you have this Russian roulette table of garbage and randomly your favorite heist is going to have some of these and potentially make them significantly worse to play for 2 whole weeks. Right after the patch got into the players' hands, it became such an obvious issue that people consulted the lead game designer. What did he have to say?
Discussions about making modifiers optional. I feel like we've talked about things to bypass modifiers, but the concern is if we add that, then people just won't even like engage with the modifiers at all. So what we're doing is we're gonna add long term that the rotations are much shorter than bi-weekly, like much shorter. And something we'll probably do long term. If certain modifiers are really problematic and difficult, we will have payout bonuses on them. So
sure, the impact of these modifiers is annoying, but I want to challenge their existence altogether. The modifier's dilemma is that anything significant is inevitably going to turn someone off, a la hostage trading to get out of custody. And there aren't enough heists in the game to turn someone off an entire heist, by the way, but anything insignificant will just be neglected and mildly annoying. Flashbang shields on paper are minor but effective. Losing my grit to one of 5 conditions that I didn't realize was on this heist is annoying. It would help if all the modifiers were like the former and were immediately obvious instead of going into custody and suddenly realizing, oh shit, I need to be freed via hostage trades, but I killed them all. Funny enough, in an interview right after introducing loud modifiers, the lead game designer specifically says he doesn't want to add knowledge checks that players can't learn mid-game. He also says he's trying to foil experienced players while knowing people still learning the game may suffer. Really fun blog post. I won't cover it all, but it truly exemplifies the game design philosophy I continue to take issue with. Highly recommend it. But I digress. Modifiers exist to counter player strategies, but I want to know what they are targeting. Because the only player strategy Cerberus Core counters is solo stealthing, since Cerberus Core forces you to need 2 people to distract 1 camera. Meanwhile, lead guards and Titan cameras actually impact a fundamental fixture of stealth gameplay in an intuitive way. Likewise, are we pretending turning all SWAT into heavy SWAT is hitting a specific type of build archetype? Because it very clearly just makes all builds take longer to kill things. What's the foil? Don't you think the point of my build was already killing things fast? Because if it wasn't, this wouldn't change anything either. The ultimate question in a hypothetical world with perfect modifiers is this. Is it a better experience if your strategy changes with modifier rotations? If your strategy on Golden Shark is to stack bags somewhere, but between weeks, the lead guard was instantiated and now the guard's going to path into you and ruin stealth. Is that a bad thing? Or is it a good thing to fail and change your strategy? No. This is just going to push everyone to the most common denominator strategy and build that's modifier proof in all situations. This is anti-build variety. There is a good type of modifier though, and it's not just a dead one. It's the ones that don't throttle strategy. Better flashbang shields, the existing double specials modifier, why not have more of these? modifiers, supercharging these specials instead of gimping the player. Supercharging all enemies by turning them into heavy SWAT doesn't work, but if only the occasional enemy is extra troublesome, that's refreshing. Glinting snipers, grenadiers with grenade launchers, armored SWAT van, the unsung heroes of Payday 3 are the repeatedly underappreciated specials and just how versatile they can be. And for what it's worth, I think these 3 stealth modifiers are really cool when mixed and matched and are very inoffensive, low impact, but interesting to play around as a stealth player. More of this. Moreover, if you think back to heist favors, an extremely productive way to keep players in heists for longer when, as of right now, the hardest of heists are being breezed through in minutes, would be through modifiers. Imagine a modifier that removes the first Dirty Eyes chopper entirely, and players for the first time in over 200 hours of playing would have to interface with taking 20 bags the long way across the map. Or a modifier that forces you to walk the road rage van backwards after you get the loot out, I guess so you can escape in it or something. And how about modifiers that just totally fudge the numbers on heists with passcodes? Like, imagine if you walk into Touch the Sky and the last 2 numbers are erased from the whiteboard, or even 3 if the RNG machine was fairly tweaked, forcing players to guess wrong and possibly blow a minute on guessing the password. This last one would affect the majority of heists, and wouldn't all of these be incredible for replayability? It enrichingly simulates that oh shit feeling when the heist suddenly takes the turn for the worse, and you've added a couple minutes of the heist time and put yourself in a vulnerable place, fundamentally changing how you play without limiting the tools you can use, instead forcing you to use them better. Very quickly, there's another angle they could take this that's an almost instant fix. Make them optional. If they rotated daily or something lucrative, but right before I ready up into no rest, I can vote with my team to enable Federal Negotiator and get more XP and cash on completion, that'd crush. It breaks the monotony because it's a different modifier daily, but I don't have to ruin the fun I already had planned. If I willingly choose to take Federal Negotiator, then I sign a waiver saying I'm accepting the challenge and I only have myself to blame when, right now, it's frustratingly out of my hands. The devs specifically say they are constantly looking for ways to challenge players because the game is so easy to master. The players are right there with you. We will interface with these modifiers as we please given the option. Don't force something that's going to be too difficult on the people that haven't mastered the game. And I've ranted extensively about modifiers for a more abstract reason beyond it's bad and here's how to fix it. People have been very vocal about how much they hate modifiers. I have no doubt they will continue to be vocal about it if the next update is the non-fix it seems to be. I want you to note and remember just how thoughtless of an addition it was in the first place. What it does is the complete opposite of what the developers claim it's meant to accomplish. All these lofty goals of countering player strategies are misguided. There's no good reason to counter player strategies instead of letting people play how they want and challenging them equally. Yet in trying anyway, they've cannibalized priorities like reducing knowledge checks and expanding build diversity to manufacture difficulty. Phew. That's everything in this patch and the full history of every update so far. Despite the many positive game health changes during Operation Medic Bag, it's also brought in an abysmal progression overhaul, god-awful rotating modifiers, and holy fucking rocked game balance, like in every orifice. Made a new one or two also, but despite me thoroughly explaining just how bad things have gotten for this game, don't forget what I said earlier. This new update is the most players it's had all year. We're at an impasse. This is what I've been building up to. Payday 3 went wrong because of how they listened to their player base. This harkens all the way back to before its release, when the entire conversation around the game was the fact that it was online only. Payday 2 was infamously peer-to-peer, which meant yes, you could play offline, or if you want to play with friends, you need to essentially connect to someone else's internet. Multiplayer in Payday 2 paused your game whenever anyone tried to join in, couldn't start without everyone loaded in, your ping hinged on the host connection, desync was constant, especially because you and only you would enter slow motion when you went down, and then the game would move faster to catch up, and client-side stealth was impossible because you'd be around a corner for 5 seconds and still being spotted by a guard. And, oh yeah, your IP was shared with everyone else playing. Just a slew of problems pervading the game for its entire 10 years of updates. So, tell me why people desperately wanted Payday 3 to be peer-to-peer. Look.
Full launch is on. There's been so many issues with all platforms with connections. That would not happen with the connection system Payday the Heist and Payday 2 had. It had peer-to-peer connection between heists, and the server's connection side was handled by Steam and later on Epic. But here we are at the mercy of the servers, and the servers are ass. So who's to say few years from now, is there even going to be an access to this game if they turn the servers offline? I can go play Payday the Heist and Payday 2 as long as Steam and Epic Games are alive, and probably even after that. But Payday 3, I'm a little bit worried. If Starbreeze goes under, who's going to be running those servers? I guess no one. And whenever Payday 3 stops making money and they move on to their next game, which I do think is scheduled to be launching in 3 years or something, when are they gonna shut down the Payday 3 servers and make people move to their next game?
With hindsight, servers are way better. Everyone can seamlessly participate in stealth, there's rarely desync and hiccups, and ever since the server stabilized around the turn of the year, the ping on the servers aren't just stable, but ping is balanced. But people wanted peer-to-peer because A, it implied offline mode, B, it dodges the game becoming abandonware down the line, and C, it avoids the servers going down unexpectedly, as they eventually did and bulldozed the game's reputation since launch. Wanting an offline mode is valid, even though Helldivers 2 is online only and no one complains. No matter how co-op oriented your game is, players reserve the right to challenge themselves to enjoy it alone, especially as a stealth game. And there's even friendly AI for this case. However, you can obviously have an offline mode without peer-to-peer, and previously live service games have done it as a la Call of Duty campaigns and zombies, just not lately. And problems B and C don't need to come to pass. I know that's just optimism speaking, and the servers literally did fail on launch despite this famous quote.
If the game is online only, what happens if the servers go down? Well, they won't, is my answer. Hopefully.
But this argument was implicitly unnecessary and hollow. The devs pledged to support this game for at least 18 months.
With our partner Deep Silver, we can look forward, to at least 18 months of post-launch content. Yeah.
And these servers have been very reliable throughout all of Operation Medic Bag. And now that offline mode is beginning to roll out, there's only upside to servers. They eliminated waiting on players to load before a heist or mid-heist, and the host now gets medium ping so that everyone else also does. It's a better experience for what used to be the client side. And I know I'm fixating on this, but it's important to recognize this is the genesis of the community's entitlement. Payday 3 gambled on reliable servers, an overall positive change to 2's sequel, and got ridiculously burned by an I told you so. Like, really burned. Their hardline stance on refusing an offline mode folded with Operation Medic Bag, and the floodgates were open. Operation Medic Bag's entire pitch is appeasing the community while patching in quality of life, and it opened with a roadmap quelling complaints about offline mode as well as some more necessary changes, because even if I disagree with how progression changed, the community was right, it needed more tweaks. People didn't like the armor system, so they showcased adaptive armor right after, even if it remains the worst way to play the game. They confirmed the imbalanced adrenaline patch was driven by community engagement, and the most recent progression rework screams twitchy and untested because of how it's brutalized the progression feel. The community is feasting on the instant satisfaction Operation Medic Bag has fed them, but this is at the cost of the game's longevity. Players like hitting 150 in 10 hours, but once that's done, the glow is gone. I'm just a guy, and I can only analyze these charts and argue what retains players as well as the next guy. So I won't. Instead, you look at this chart of Payday 3's player count as it moves with updates, and draw your own conclusions. And as I said before, what are they going to do about the thousands of renown levels players have earned since the progression patch if they change it later? God, I hope they do. But let me walk back my previous point. You are not at fault. I'm not at fault. Starbreeze did this to themselves. Off launch, 4-plate was a sloppy and unoptimal way to play the game, and some people are still under the delusion it's good. That's not because it was the only way to play, it's because no one knew better. It wasn't communicated at launch that you could regenerate armor or how long it took, and yet we got adaptive armor out of that mess to resemble an armor system players were more familiar with. Payday 2's. Off launch, challenges were daunting, dizzying, and people couldn't figure out why they weren't leveling up. That's not because everyone is stupid, it's because there were 2,000 text boxes to skim over in one place. It wasn't communicated that only 10% of those mattered because the other 90% were do the same thing but more times, i.e. weapon kills or heist completions. And yet, they removed all challenges to resemble a progression system players knew. Payday 2's. There is an alternate universe where these problems were communicated well and the community adapted before Operation Medic Bag swept in and fundamentally changed the game. Instead, they got the worst of both worlds, as Operation Medic Bag was far too late to catch their player base and is stuck working on the back foot trying to regain players instead of retaining what they had. I can't totally blame the community for gut checking and whining about everything different about Payday 3. Starbreeze's reaction to the community has either humored unnecessary changes or blown out what we truly want out of proportion. The gorgeous vision Payday 3 launched with was thrown out the window for no good reason after syntax error. Realistically, it's easy to assume it was just to ensure they still turned a profit in the time they're stuck with this game, instead of possibly building it for the long term. But, and I'm sorry for this non sequitur, but you're not out of the woods either. Not you specifically, I'm gonna criticize a lot of dim-witted behavior, but not you. Your mind is beautiful. Don't forget that. So here's the non sequitur. The discourse around this game is, for lack of a better term, dog shit. It would be very sweet and nice if everyone thought as critically as I did about game balance, but that's not just what I mean. Look at this. Is any of this productive? The 15th Payday 3 Sucks video is supposed to have some revelation. I know what this video is called, but I actually had something to add to the conversation that you won't find in all of this. And I still do because the video is still going. Here's what separates my line of discussion from all of these, and let me cook, I'm going somewhere with this. I'll pick out some keystone quotes.
With their cash cows at the end of their rope, it's only a matter of time before the company itself implodes.
This is disgustingly ill-informed. Starbreeze is not going to bankrupt again. It's not a publisher anymore. It's a studio. Like any studio, their publisher Deep Silver reserves the right to terminate their agreement as their contract permits. As of right now, it's all but confirmed Starbreeze has 18 full months with a fully funded Payday 3, not to mention more gigs with other games that are keeping the lights on for the foreseeable future. Starbreeze's cash cow is not Payday 3, they are sucking on the teat of a genuine cash cow. Investors, the ones behind these games, hands tied to paying for 9 more months. And for the record, Deep Silver verifiably got their investment back on Payday 3, so this plain isn't true. There's too much factual evidence Payday 3 is here to say, not on the end of the rope. And this.
Their claim to fame is bringing back offline mode in a small capacity, reversing the progression system and slightly lowering DLC prices. That's it? That's how you're gonna save this game. First of all, these are the people who needed 3 months for their day 1 patch. All they will do is make Payday 3 playable again. That's it, really. Still, over 95% of all future heists and cosmetics are gonna be paid DLC, not to mention the in-game store coming in 2025, if they have an audience by then. These updates just make the game not suck anymore.
I mean, the day 1 patch burn is sick, but Jesus. Besides being disingenuous because they are bringing back offline mode in its full capacity soon, this is the reductive and redundant landfill that pervades Payday 3 Discourse most. All they'll do is make the game playable. That's it, huh? Do people not want to play this game? Isn't the entire point so far that people couldn't play the game because of the servers or challenges or matchmaking or so on? They literally do need to make the game playable. And it is. We are at a point where the complaints you can lob at Payday 3 are beyond the inability of engaging with the game. Where are these people actually engaging with the game, going bar for bar with me, complaining about specifics about how the new progression sucks or adrenaline is bad? The only types of people talking about the game anymore either haven't touched it in months, or they're mindlessly huffing these changes saying, "Ooh, yippee, I level up every heist now, I guess." There's no critical analysis. Now, I could skim every one of these for bad points, and low-key I am addicted to how thoughtless a lot of these takes are, but I think I've made my point. There's a nugget of knowledge more important in this one. It has nothing to do with the video. I'll bite my tongue before calling the kettle black, but no. The important thing is this. Look at the number of views on all these videos, actually. Why are there so many eyeballs on Payday 3? In fact, for all of these Payday 3's bad videos, they overperform leagues beyond what the channel's videos typically net before and after they make it. We're talking videos from February to now. The attention economy should have crashed by like December of last year, but people are still paying attention. I'm not capable of explaining to you why everyone's showing up to watch 70 minutes of speculating this game's downfall, but it's still fact that they are here. They are among us right now. Payday 3 can't net 2,000 Steam players on update day, but they can net 1 million views on a hate video essay. Doesn't this mean people are still invested in Payday? I mean, Payday 2 has 40,000 concurrent players. Of course people still care about the game. And now Payday 3 is generally in a playable state. Most of the massive on-launch player base would probably like this game now. How does Payday 3 win these people back? I genuinely don't know, I'm asking. And real quick, shout out to Noli and all the Starbreeze partners. These are the people thinking for the entire community and speaking on their behalf behind closed doors to the developers. They heavily vouched for the gameplay loop of Payday 3 when they played it early, and have since rolled out their own version of regret and apology because, well, it clearly hasn't panned out and the community's desperate enough to point fingers at them. I feel for them, even if I think it's pathetic to walk things back at this point. These content creators literally just get advanced information from the developers that might be better communicated to everyone or no one and react accordingly. They don't have control over the game, but juggle plenty of blame. And shout out to the community-facing Starbreeze staff for taking so much blame too. Almir is a saint. He does not deserve to be painted as a devil. He's the face of the community. He's literally just a guy. Specifically, Almir is the global brand director and head of community. And same with Elizabeth. She is the community and influencer manager, neither of which necessarily have to do with developing the game, but they take the majority of the blame. And more so in the in-group of active Payday players and partners, I see everyone throwing around Mio's name, the lead game designer, for essentially that whole interview he did that I talked about at length and all of these balance changes that people take issue with. All I can really say is that taking issue with the game design and vocalizing it is good, but can we stop specifically blaming Mio? It is highly presumptuous to think being lead game designer puts him solely in control of what goes and doesn't. Like there aren't 1,000 voices behind him and several in the studio beside him. I made it a point to address the development team as a whole this entire video because that's what Starbreeze is. And to wrap back around on the two types of people talking about Payday 3, to prove the discourse is devoid of any value, I'll switch sides for a second and say this. Payday 3 defenders need to take notes too. Their one and only data point is constantly clutched to with the phrase, "People forget Payday 2 took years to be good. Payday 3 just needs time." Why? Just tell me why it needs time. What could they possibly fix over time that would make it worth revisiting? This is a genuine question no one bothers asking, so I'll answer it for you. Get your pens out. Player count, despite it being my crutch to make a lot of points in this video, doesn't tell the full story. Back in December, you'd waste 7 minutes trying to matchmake into a public lobby where everyone would leave immediately, and then you'd crash and your computer would catch on fire. And there were more players then than any time this past year. Operation Medic Bag genuinely improved the health of the game. It's definitely playable now. And like I've just proven, the bones of the game are great. People just couldn't play it before, and sure, there's some problems rearing their head now, but there are solutions in this video at the developer's fingertips, within reach, and if you give Payday 3 enough time, I have faith they will resolve all the gripes in this video. They have 9 more months to send this thing to space. Payday 3 just needs time.
Is it Shade FRB asks on YouTube, is it true Payday 3 is on trial for 18 months, and if the game doesn't do well, support will be cut? Absolutely not. We will continue supporting Payday 3 for years. That's our goal and ambition.
The reality is that the on-launch Payday 3 I knew and loved is long gone. Whether or not the dev team can make good choices from here on out, one thing is certain, and that's that they cannot and will not restore Payday 3 to anything remotely like its tough but balanced form from launch. Perhaps in an alternate world where the servers worked on launch, the bugs weren't so buggy, and the progression was to the community's liking, there would be a vocal majority of players vouching for that era of the game. Instead, choices were clearly driven by wanting to appease an upset player base, allow progression, adaptive armor, and adrenaline, and the other half, I just don't know. I think I've dissected modifiers enough to accuse everyone responsible of not thinking enough, and I hope people start calling things like favors into question in the same way, because a few mechanics are flawed this way. I do genuinely enjoy this game despite the many flaws listed because of the bones of the game from launch. In fact, look, the gameplay on screen right now was recorded right before this voiceover, and it was the most fun I've had all year on Payday 3, specifically because we had half the players and refused to use favors, and I didn't use the new skills. But I'd be lying saying I still like this game like I did before. I rarely play it since Operation Medic Bag. But wishing for the game to turn back the clock is wishful. It's unrealistic. I'm happy to give the old Payday 3 one final swan song, but there's really two things I hope people learn from this video. Firstly, it's not what the community is saying, but why they are saying it. It's not the player's job to do all the thinking I've done. People complained about armor because they misunderstood it. Instead, armor's been rashly replaced and rendered useless, while people still don't know how to play it. On the other hand, people are complaining about modifiers because they are annoying and suck, not because it's challenging them in a positive way. It's not always that deep, and I acknowledge it's hard to know when it is that deep, but it's the game designer's job to discover the difference, and we are trusting them. However, the trust has never been flimsier with Payday 3. Like, seriously, it is concerning how quick players are to blame specific Starbreeze employees and about balance issues, and more broadly, the community is not dedicating their energy to real concerns. I hope the devs and community alike change their tune, frankly. The other thing I want you to learn from this is that some content updates are more flawed than others. Modifiers need a massive makeover, but progression is close to greatness and needs care. The game balance can't decide if it's being grounded and realistic or goofy and over the top. Go with the latter. Infinite health for anyone skillful enough, infinite armor for anyone silly enough. The game's missed its window to keep up the facade that everything is gritty and realistic and 10% damage buff actually matters. The players want over the top too, because they never fell in love with launch Payday 3 like I did. They know Payday 2. They don't want more of this. They want more of this. The game has also come very far in other ways. You wouldn't believe it, but it's much easier to find a game now with an average of 500 players than 7 months ago with an average of 2,000. And that's thanks to significant server improvements and the matchmaking improvements brought upon by Operation Medic Bag. Most people returning to the game after syntax error don't really feel that change yet because there's not much new content. But the biggest content update of the year so far releases June 27th, and it truly sounds like a turning point for the game.
The heist takes place in a police station. One of cosmetic options made
in the weapon pack, we got 3 powerful options.
And lowering the price of the upcoming DLCs. New matchmaking service. We've added the DLSS frame generation. Why can't I keep playing solo in Payday 3? Well, now you can.
The first LMG has finally graced Payday 3.
Clover is back and we have an intense summer ahead of us, heisters. 2 more DLCs are coming out before September. Add to that free content, new features, fixes and changes. There's a lot. We can build this game together, heisters. Nothing's gonna stop us now.
I hope this game sees another player count peak and even more success for the rest of the year. What Payday 3 could have been is behind us, but there's untapped potential in every new mechanic, and Boys in Blue might just be where the Payday 3 narrative flips. Thank you for watching. This was a very long video. I hope you enjoyed it, kept you engaged, and you learned a lot. Thank you to all the content creators that I included in this video. Their links are in the description if I used their voice or their video. Special thanks to my friends in the Payday community. It's PD Lucky, C-Dog, it's the hotline. With extra special thanks to my bestie Lucky for proofreading all of this. This was my biggest personal project of all time. It's the longest essay I've ever written. It's my first time editing, if you couldn't tell. So I set a lot of records with this project. If anyone's curious, I used the freeware shortcut. It was very simple but effective, at least if you think so. I also didn't take too long to finish this, if you're wondering. It took about 2 weeks working at my leisure. I wasn't really rushing through it. From the full process, from the first word of the script all the way to final edit and captioning everything. I hope that inspires somebody to try this. It was a lot of fun. It was free. I recommend it if you're interested. And with all the effort this took in mind, please like the video. You don't have to subscribe. I have no idea if I will ever make another video again, but at least like it. And before I send you off, I want to bring back a question from a few minutes ago. In the comments, along with your thoughts on the video, of course, please help me answer this question. How does Payday 3 win these people back? Alright, thanks again for watching. Have a good life. I love you. Keep being yourself. Happy Pride. Boys in Blue sweep.
Looking back over these 10 years, it's a lot of beautiful memories.
Boys in Blue sweep!
A lot of hardships, I'm not gonna lie, but ultimately it became something great.
Boys in Blue sweep?
And it's a lot thanks to you.
Who's fucking excited? The Boys in Blue, the sweep. I can't believe it!
Thank you so much for your support.
Boys in Blue sweep!
Thanks for playing.
Boys in Blue sweep.
I salute you.
Can I get a Boys in Blue sweep for something I'm working on?
Who's fucking
Say it with me, y'all.
The Boys
in Blue
sweep.
sweep!
I can't believe it!
Boys in Blue sweep!